Yeah. I would let Tom say one and one for Tom.
Okay.
Yeah, why don't you, I think she was talking about alphabetical order, so maybe she was.
She told which one.
Okay.
Who's the lady? Susan.
Yeah, that's what I hear, yeah, we're over there, so I can tell you that. Good to see you, man.
The way they ran.
I saw Elaine Bauer show her. I didn't even, they asked me on the test, so I didn't even look at it.
What are they?
They did.
What are they saying? Initially.
We're trying to have letters.
Did they want?
And then I'm doing, the octopuses are 5 apiece. I have no idea.
I know. I couldn't
Change
figure
your
out how to
adults.
use it.
So, he needs two letters, eventually it'll turn up a bunch of letters, like a bunch of A's, a bunch of B's, and if we go to like an event, I can like build them on the spot. Just slide on. And then it's I'll leave it to the end, because I already watched it. I thought, more taxi.
Well, yeah, I think Cheryl.
Between local taxi.
Well,
See.
which is kind of funny, it comes around I just tried to answer it.
Make sure it's on.
So I thought, okay, it must be which I thought I could call you, and then I left my phone and tell me to call. I'm
So, come to
I've heard Well, it's 7 o'clock, so we'll go ahead and get started. Scott may not make it, he's farming. So, but that's what his wife said last night, so he may be a little late. So let's set our flag salute.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Chad, would you like to lead us in
Sure.
prayer?
Let's pray. God, we love you, and Lord, we're so grateful for a beautiful, beautiful day that you've given to us today. Thank you for the safety of these who have been able to come in tonight. I pray that you'll give wisdom all of these representatives as they're here, as they represent us, I pray that we collectively will follow your leadership and direction for our life, for our state, for our individual agencies as well. Bless this meeting tonight. Lord, I pray that we'll get a lot of information, and I pray also that everything that will be done tonight is honoring in your sight. We ask this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
Come on, Scott.
We got a spot for you up here,
We got a
buddy.
spot for you, Scott. Didn't know if you'd make it because your wife said you was farming last night.
We just got out of the soybean field.
Good to see you. For those that may not know all of our representatives and our special guest, this is Tom Peebles. He's going to talk a little bit on some corporate taxing before we get to our representatives. Scott Heel is our representative out of Abilene in that area. Susan Concannon is our representative in that part of Salina. I think since they
I'll
just
talk about it.
Okay, redistricted. And then Stephen Howell, which is our Salina, and Clark Sanders. And so we'll start with Tom tonight. We'll give them all about 30 to 45 minutes overall for all 5 of them, and then we'll open it up for questioning and answering. So, Tom, do you want to start?
I'm a retired tax attorney, and I've worked with a lot of small businesses. And I was reading my Kansas Bar Journal, and I read about the Corporate Transparency Act. And the Corporate Transparency Act, to me, comes off as overreaching and it actually is scary from a civil rights point of view, to me, as an attorney. And what it does, so how many of you heard of the Corporate Transparency Act? Has anybody? I talked to my small business owners and all that I know. Nobody knows about it. And what it does is it creates a federal database for small businesses and the owners. So that means they're going to make all the small businesses send the information about their business and their individual ownership to the federal government, and so they know they have a database to search small businesses. This database can be accessed by various law enforcement agencies, federal agencies, foreign governments investigating through our federal agencies, and banks with certain permissions. The companies are affected, so if you own an LLC, a corporation, or a limited partnership, you generally are going to have to file with the federal government on this. And there's one exception for businesses that have 20 or more than 20 employees, 5 million in gross assets, or gross sales, and have a physical operation in the U.S., they're exempt from this filing requirement. So these filing requirements kick in next year. So if you have if you have one of these LLCs, an example of the LLC is, I know a guy started a lawn business. He put his business in an LLC. He's going to have to file. I talked to ladies who put their cleaning business in an LLC. They're going to have to file. And it's only these businesses with more than 20 employees, 5 million gross receipts, and that are exempt. The timing is this: if you are a current entity, you're going to have to file by the end of next year, 2024. And if you start up a new business in 2024, you have to file within 30 days. And this will be sent into it's FineSyn. It's a criminal division of the U.S. Treasury. They're collecting all this stuff. Violations, if you fail to do this in a willful manner, then you will have to, you're subject to a $500 per day penalty up to $10,000, plus a possibility of 2 years in imprisonment. Now, when I was talking to some of the people, that I knew and asked them what they knew about this, one person replied, well, it was passed in a bipartisan manner, and that is true. But it was attached to the National Defense Authorization Act for 2021. And it was passed on January 1st, 2021. So it's one of those massive bills that get passed, and they attach everything to it. I went and researched how it got passed, and actually this bill has been around for about a decade, and they couldn't get it passed on its own merits. So they attached it to this National Defense Act. Actually, Trump vetoed that act, but he was fighting over the border wall. And when you read, all the write-up about it, it's about the border wall funding and all that, the Defense Act, the people wanted to improve our defense. And there's no mention of this. So it just got attached last minute to a bill that got passed, over the holidays. So what I gave you is a written explanation, and where I got the information from is it's a National Law Review article, a Kansas Bar Journal, and American Bar Journal. Also, I gave you a link to FineSend, that's the Treasury Department, and they give a fact sheet about this. And so two of those articles, the National Law Review and American Bar Association article, you could, if you wanted to read it, I don't know if you want to, you could go online and get that information. But just to give you an example, this is a complicated law. There's a lot of ifs, ands, or buts I'm not talking about right now. And there may be exceptions, but what they're going to require you to do is if you own one of these entities, you have send in the legal name, the trade name, the address, and the jurisdiction in which you're formed under, and the IRS ID number. You also have to, on your owners, you have to give their full legal name, their date of birth, their current business or residential address, and a picture ID of either like a driver's license or a passport of their owners. So what this is they're gathering a big database for small business. So anyway, and thank you for the Brigade for allowing me to tell people about this.
Come on in, sit down, you don't have to stand the whole time. We got plenty of chairs. This is going to go next.
I'm going to have to stand up. I don't think I can talk sitting down that long. So I am absolutely totally unprepared, so you're just getting me off the cuff because I just came from the soybean field. We've been cutting beans all day. And so if I've got a little bit of rattle in my voice, it's the soybean dust. It's really great to be here. I love this group. I love coming to Salina and talking with you guys and communicating with you. I think some of the things that have already been talked about are indicative of the challenges that we have as state government. As I was thinking through that, I'm a little bit of a Constitution nerd, and I know the U.S. Constitution pretty well. And there's a section in there that says anything that's not delineated in the Constitution is for the states' control. And I don't remember delineation of controlling small businesses in the U.S. Constitution. And so there's that, we're faced with that all the time in Topeka. And so it's something that's kind of overarching and something you need to be paying attention to. The U.S. Supreme Court has agreed to hear a case this year, and I can't remember, there's two cases that have been combined, so I don't know for sure what they're calling it, but it will test the Chevron doctrine. And you need to keep track of that because the Chevron doctrine essentially says that agencies at the federal government level have the legislative control, essentially. That they can control what happens in your state, what happens in our state, all across the United States. So like EPA has used that a whole lot. Fish, Wildlife, and Parks has used that. The education system has used that. And so it's really important, and the hope is that that doctrine will be overturned. And it'll start to move some control back to the states and out of federal agencies. I want to talk to you just a little bit about education because it's the most important thing I think I'm doing in Topeka right now. And our education system is essentially dictated by the Federal Department of Education. And they do it with enticement money. They don't begin to fund education, but they throw just enough out there that we don't want to, the educators don't want to not have that money. And so on the state level, our State Department of Education, Kansas is really unique in that we have a constitutional Department of Education. And so the legislature has roles in education, but the State Board of Education does as well. And so they have, over the past 30 years, have been very reticent to follow what the federal government wants. And that has led us to a situation where we have education standards that have resulted in approximately 70% of fourth graders not being able to read in the state. And we're starting to get that turned around. We've passed some legislation that's requiring going back to a phonetic type of reading instruction. We went away from that for about 20 years, and the result is that kids can't read. And so we're starting to see a little bit of improvement in that, but we have a long ways to go in our education system in the state. And it's not just reading, it's math, it's science, it's an understanding of civics. All of those things have been left by the wayside while we've adopted a liberal ideology of education that says it really doesn't matter what you know as long as you feel good about it. And that might be an oversimplification, but we need to get back to actually teaching kids something. And I believe the best way to do that is choice in education, allowing dollars to follow where parents want to send their kids. And because a lot of parents really are concerned about their kids' education. The second thing I want to talk to you a little bit about is tax relief. We tried really hard last year to get some broad tax relief passed, and I am hopeful that this year the impetus will be there because Governor Kelly vetoed everything that we passed, and I'm a big proponent of reducing property tax, and leadership in the state has indicated that they're interested in reducing property tax. And so I'm really excited about the prospect of doing that. And so hopefully we can stand here a year from now and say that in spite of Governor Kelly's veto, we reduced property taxes. So once again, thank you so much for the opportunity to speak, and just really good to be here.
I'm going to sit if that's okay. So my name's Susan Kincannon, and I'm probably some of you wondering why I'm with this group. I'm from Beloit, but redistricting last year, well, let me start from the beginning. Redistricting created 3 rural districts to move to, 2 of them to Kansas City and 1 to Wichita. So with Stephen Johnson running for state treasurer, then that was a district that they were able to collapse. But Saline County is big enough that it needs 3 legislators representing. So my district, I used to have Mitchell, Cloud, Ottawa, and half of Lincoln County. So with redistricting now, I have from 81 west in Saline County down to relatively close to Crawford. Just if you just draw an imaginary line straight west from Crawford Street. And then it comes into the city of Salina between State Street and Crawford, and then it jags to Iron and Crawford, and it comes into Santa Fe. And I have, what was I just going to say? There's about 8,000 people then from Salina and Saline County that are part of it's about 1/3 of my district now. So it's an interesting district for me to represent because I have these really rural counties, and then I have downtown Salina. But I'm originally from here. I graduated from Central in '76. I grew up out east of town on Simpson Road. My mom was a nurse at St. John's. My dad
worked for the Salina Planing Mill. So this is all very familiar to me. In my district, my church that I grew up in and the neighborhood that I knew really well. So I'm not new to the legislature. I'm in my 6th term, so I've been there 11 years. I chair a committee that's on child welfare, so child welfare and foster care. So I've been working on those kind of issues for about 5 years, and it's tough work. It's really tough work, and especially with the death that we just had a couple weeks ago out of Topeka, it's just heart-wrenching. So I chair that, and I also am the incoming chair of the Child Welfare Oversight Committee, which is a committee that's combined House and Senate, and we meet quarterly for 2 days at a time. My other committees, I've been on appropriations for maybe 8 years, and that's a nice committee to be on. Steve's on there too. You get an overview of everything, all the different aspects of state government and how we're spending our money. And then I also serve on Judiciary Committee, which overlaps really well with a lot of the health issues I'm interested in and with the child welfare issues. And then I also serve on the CanCare Oversight, which is Kansas Medicaid. So I've been pretty involved with Medicaid through the years. So I just basically wanted to give you an introduction of who I am, because I haven't met many of you, and it's probably a surprise to you to see that there's a new representative in Salina now. So now, besides Salina, I have all of Mitchell County, which is where I live, and all of Ottawa, and then I just have half of Cloud County. So it splits down 81.
Now, we were at a meeting the other night, we found out some kind of interesting. One of you has Salina Regional Health Center, and the other one has the surgical hospital right across the street. So do you have...
I have the hospital.
You've got the hospital, and Stephen's got the surgical center.
I also have the parking garage. So yeah, sometimes these boundaries, they create some interesting situations, but nonetheless, we all work together really well to help serve those that we're privileged to serve. So my name is Stephen Howe. I represent the 71st District of Kansas. It's East Salina and Saline County. It goes all the way to the Dickinson County line, all the way south down to Kip, and kind of Santa Fe is kind of and Ohio are the two main north-south dividing lines. I serve on 2 committees. This past session, I got appointed to serve on the House Appropriations Committee, which is, I guess it depends how you look at it. It could be also known as the Spending Committee or the Budget Committee. It's very interesting because you're tasked with listening to agency budget requests and listening to subcommittees that report out these budget requests to the larger committee, and at the same time, at a different time of day, in a different, maybe the same room, maybe a different room, I can't remember, but the tax committee is meeting. And so they're pulling the levers on the tax side of things, which obviously affects what you do on the spending side. So it's a little interesting being separated from the tax side of things as we work on our budget. I also serve on the Higher Education Budget Committee. It's my first year on that committee, and also being new to the committee, I'm serving as chairman. So that was quite the honor when the speaker-elect at the time, before last Christmas, called me up and said, "Hey, Steve, we would like you to serve as chair of the Higher Education Budget Committee." I said, "Speaker-elect, I'm not even on that committee, and you want me to be chair?" And he goes, "You're not on the committee?" I said, "No." He said, "Oh, it doesn't matter. You'll do fine. So I guess I got thrown into the deep end a little bit, but basically the Higher Education Budget Committee is a subcommittee of the Appropriations Committee. It's still a standing committee, but we listen to all the budget presentations from the Regent universities in Kansas. There's 6 Regent universities. 3 are research institutions, which would be Wichita State, University of Kansas, Kansas State University. Then you have 3 regional universities with Pittsburgh State, Emporia State, and Fort Hays State. You have 1 municipal university, Washburn. Wichita State, a long time ago, used to be a municipal university. You also have 19 Kansas community colleges. You have 20 independent nonprofit colleges, including Kansas Wesleyan University. You have 7 Kansas technical colleges, which includes Salina Area Technical College. So there's a lot of different institutions in the state of Kansas, and it's very unique for a state of our size in terms of population that we support that many institutions. There's a lot of challenges in higher education, one of which is enrollment. Enrollment in the sense of going to a traditional university. So there's less students going into that into those institutions, more students going to trade schools, more going to Salina Area Technical College. So that's kind of the dynamic we're working with. And coming out of COVID, it's really shaken things up in a lot of ways. This past session, I got to help work on a bill which created an affiliation between Fort Hays State University and Northwest Kansas Technical College in Goodland and North Central Kansas Technical College in Beloit. And that affiliation will hopefully help those 2 technical colleges leverage, I guess, what is known as a brand. Fort Hays State University has a great brand. They can use that brand to help recruit students into those trade schools, but it also creates pathways for students. Some students going to a 4-year institution might come to learn after a semester or 2, or maybe 2 years, that, hey, I'm not, this isn't a good fit, but I'm really interested in pursuing this technical trade. And the goal is to credential students in some way. You know, whether it's an associate's degree or some sort of a certificate that allows them to practice a trade. But we don't want kids going to school for 2 years, then walking away with nothing to show for it. So we need to create pathways for them to be successful in whatever they decide to do. Also this past session, I started asking some questions. And sometimes when you ask questions, it creates a little bit of a blowback, or maybe a knee-jerk reaction amongst some people. But I had seen across the country that there's a great interest in diversity, equity, and inclusion, not only in corporate boardrooms, but at our institutions of higher learning. So I wanted to know what diversity, equity, and inclusion programs are, what that meant in terms of dollars, what that meant in terms of programs that are offered to students. It really wasn't something that was around when I was on campus at Kansas State University. So I had a lot to learn. I started asking questions. I didn't get a lot of answers that I was looking for. So in the legislature, we have a committee called Legislative Post-Audit. And the Legislative Post-Audit Committee can take requests for audits on state government and state agencies, including universities, about spending, or maybe it's about different efficiencies and results, really drilling down into an issue. And so I had made a request to the Legislative Post-Audit Committee, and they did approve an audit. And so that audit is just started last week. This committee, these are professional auditors that work under the legislative branch of government at the State House. And they're going to be asking questions of the universities. What is your definition of diversity, equity, and inclusion? What are you doing? What does that mean? How much are you spending on that? And so forth. I have really made no judgments about diversity, equity, and inclusion as it relates to our college campuses. I just want information. Because when you serve on a budget committee, you need information so you can make sound decisions. And without that, it's kind of hard. But I did read a headline, and one of the reasons I was asking about it is the University of Michigan this past academic year spent $18 million on diversity, equity, and inclusion. It helped pay for the salaries of 142 staff. But what are those staff people doing? That's what I want to know. And that's $18 million could pay tuition for over 1,000 students at the University of Michigan. And so, as chairman, I want to see dollars go to students. One of the biggest barriers to getting into college or a university is tuition, the cost of tuition, and things like that. But if we're creating a bureaucracy that is seeing minimal results, then it needs to go away. And we need to get money to the students so they can have an opportunity to grow and learn and earn their professional degree. So that was one issue I worked on this past session. Another one is kind of one that you wouldn't read in the newspaper. It was involving Smith Hall at the University of Kansas. And this was the building in which the religious studies program had been basically headquartered since the late 70s, I believe. The university didn't actually acquire the property until 1998. But at that building is the only physical representation of the state or the university seal at the University of Kansas. Does anybody know what's in the university seal at the University of Kansas? That's a good song. That is a great song. So the university seal and motto is from Exodus 3:3. And it says, I will see this great vision in which the bush does not burn. And so in the seal at the University of Kansas, you have Moses kneeling before the burning bush. And at that building at Smith Hall, there's a large bronze statue, and it's kneeling. And there's a stained glass window with the burning bush in it. And the University of Kansas had probably got the cart before the horse. They were trying to use some state monies to address deferred maintenance and also demolition of buildings. And that building got put on the list. There wasn't a lot of information of why. And so it created a little bit of a firestorm there in Lawrence. A lot of people had questions, and there were not a lot of answers. So I stepped in, and my committee members stepped in. Representative Mike Amix, a Democrat from Lawrence, stepped in. He had heard from his constituents, and we addressed the issue. Basically, we passed a proviso in the budget which prohibited the Board of Regents from using any state dollars to do anything to that building until we get some more information. So that was one battle that was unforeseen, but one that kept popping up. It actually got pulled out of the budget, then we got put back in kind of in the late hours. So I was proud that we did that. And it was kind of interesting because I worked with a gal who sent me historical information about the history of this building. And I learned that a neighbor 3 doors down from me, his father helped donate some money for that building. And so there was a story to be told. There's a lot of history of that building, and I just hated to see it, go so quickly for some unknown reason. Also, I was proud to help work on the Kansas Geological Survey. We did increase their budget, and that was to attract some key researchers and scientists who work on water issues, hydrology, also work on oil and gas issues, and water and energy are huge issues in the state of Kansas, so we need to make sure we have the right people in our state that can study those issues and problems. And I'm probably going a little long, but I did write down some notes. The speaker asked me to serve on the Higher Education Task Force. This is a task force that is sponsored by the National Conference of State Legislatures. And we had one meeting this summer. We have another one in Washington, D.C. And basically, there's over 20 people like me representing different states in higher education. And we're going to make a trip to Washington, D.C. to meet with our federal elected representatives, as well as people in the President Biden's cabinet to talk about higher education. You know, we feel like we have some leverage at the state level to address some issues that the federal government actually has control over. And so we're going to make that trip yet this year. This past session, there's two things I thought were kind of unique. One was Senate Bill 3, which designated the state land fossil. You know, that's really important, right? But the fun thing is it was originated by students in Kansas schools. And I think the year before, there was a bill introduced by some students to designate the sandhill plum as the state fruit. So in a way, it's kind of fun to see the students get involved and carry an idea to their elected representatives and see it pass. So the state land fossil is the ankylosaur, just in case you're wondering. Also, we passed a bill, and it was enacted into law to basically align state law with federal law that to buy tobacco products or sell them, you have to be 21 years of age. So in the upcoming session, I'll be working with Representative Donahoe in addressing the state exemption on the statewide smoking ban in casinos. Because I think it's very hypocritical for the state to enact, you know, this law that says, you know, you can't smoke in certain areas except for our state-owned casinos. You know, that's just hypocritical, needs to be addressed, and also it's a public health issue. So those are some things I just thought were unique and not something you read about every day. So I look forward to your questions, and it's an honor to serve you, and hope you guys have a great evening.
So I'm going to do a combination of standing and sitting. I'm going to talk to you tonight about three things, and the first thing I'm going to talk to you about is the most important thing, so I'm going to stand. And what I want to do first off is recognize my wife Lillian is here because it is her birthday. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Lillian. Happy birthday to you. Now I really should know this, but is this birthday number 45 or 46? 39. All of us who serve need to be thankful for our spouses because they all make sacrifices for us in order to do that. The second thing I wanted to talk to you about is there was, it either came out yesterday or today, a new poll from Emerson College, and it had, in the state of Kansas only, Governor Kelly's job approval and Joe Biden's job approval. and I thought you'd be interested in those numbers. So Governor Kelly's job approval, according to the new Emerson College poll, is 39%. Now, she used to be up in the mid to upper 70s. The disapproval is 30%, and the neutral is 31%. So those numbers aren't great, but Joe Biden would love to have those numbers, because in the state of Kansas, his approval rating is 27%, a disapproval rating of 58%, and a neutral of 15%. Now, what's not so great about this poll, and just real quick, I know I'm throwing a lot of numbers at you, but Democrats, the approval for Kelly is 67%, and that sounds high, but it used to be up somewhere between 85 and 90%. So 67% of Democrats approve, 20% of Democrats are neutral, 13% disapprove. Among independents, 45% approve, and that used to be up around 75%. 31% disapprove, and 31% are neutral, and 25% disapprove. Now, here's what I think is the bad news from this poll. Among Republicans in the state of Kansas, 24% of Republicans approve of the job this woman is doing. Who are these people? 29% are neutral among Republicans, and 47% of Republicans disapprove of the job she's doing. Not even half the Republicans in the state of Kansas disapprove of the job Laura Kelly is doing, and for the life of me, I don't know why. All right, the big thing I wanted to talk to you about now is something called SB 229. So SB 229 was something we passed this past session. And I'm just going to real quickly read what it was to you. Relating to compensation, salary, and retirement benefits of members of the legislature, creating the Legislative Compensation Commission, prescribing powers and duties of the commission, authorizing the commission to set rates of compensation and salary for members of the legislature, establishing procedures for review and possible rejection of such rates of compensation and salary by the legislature, and eliminating previously established compensation commissions. So the idea of this bill was to establish this commission to examine legislative pay. It passed in the House with 96 yay votes. Representative Susan Kincannon voted for it. Representative Stephen Howe voted for it. Representative Clark Sanders voted for it. Representative Scott Hill did not vote for it. So there you have it. But 96 to 26, it passed. And so this commission came into existence. Now I want to talk to you real quickly about legislative pay as it stands today, and then what's going to happen if this report by the commission gets approved. So right now, as legislators, we get $88.66 per day for every legislative day. And a session is supposed to be 90 days. So that comes out to just under $8,000. In addition to the $88.66 a day for the legislative days, we get $708 a month. So 7 months out of the year, we get $708. That comes out to a little less than $5,000. So currently, our total legislative pay is $12,935. Now there's a per diem on top of that, and we get some mileage on top of that, but the wages, $12,935. The compensation committee is going to vote Thursday morning, day after tomorrow, to recommend an increase in the base pay for members to $287 a day. That comes out to almost $43,000 a year. I'm going to tell you right now, if that passes, I mean, which it could, I'm gonna fight against this. Going from 13,000 to 43,000 in one fell swoop is too much, too quick, in my opinion. The $157 per day that we get as our per diem, in other words, to help pay for our housing and our other living expenses when we're in Topeka, that $157 per day, and again, we only get that during the 90 days of the legislative session, will remain unchanged. Now, the way this is going to shake out is during the first 30 days that we're up in Topeka, we're going to get $3,325.50. For the next 4 months, we're going to get a monthly wage of $5,620.10. So for that 4 months, we'll get approximately $22,500. And then for the remaining 7 months, which we're currently getting $12,935, we'll now be getting $17,187. So how did they come up with this? So what they did for a starting point was base it off of what the federal representatives get paid. And they came up with 43,000 because that's approximately 1/4 of what Tracy Mann, Jake LaTurner, Ron Estes, what they get paid. What they're going to do over and above that is they're going to put in place a way to adjust this. And what it's going to be based on is a rolling average of Kansas salaries over 3 years. So for example, to determine what raise or deduction we would get in 2023, so you take the average Kansas salary for 2020, 2021, 2022, whatever that average is, and see what it went up to or down in 2023. And if it went up 3%, legislators would get a 3% raise. If it went down 3%, we'd lose 3% in pay. But it'll be indexed to what Kansans are making based on a rolling 3-year average. Now, there are some people who have more important jobs, frankly, than any of us sitting at this table. And they are compensated more, and they should be compensated more. But this, to me, and again, I'm one guy, one opinion, seems a bit excessive. If this plan goes into effect as it's currently proposed, then the Speaker of the House and the President of the Senate will make $70,520 a year. The Vice President of the Senate, the Speaker Pro Tem of the House, the Assistant Majority Leaders, and the Senate and House Representatives and Assistant Minority Leaders will make $57,190 a year. Again, keep in mind we'd be making 43. The majority and minority leaders in the House, so the House Majority Leader is Chris Croft, a really good guy, and the Minority Leader is a woman, it's Diane Sykes, isn't it? I think so. So those folks would get $67,940. And then Stephen was talking about he's on the Ways and Means Committee, that, and well, he's on the House Appropriations Committee, and that's a really big committee. I mean, those guys do a lot of work. And their chair, Troy Waymaster, does a ton of work. So for those, the committees of what in the House is called the Appropriations Committee, and what in the Senate is called the Ways and Means Committee, their salary would be $64,500. So, here's the thing. I'm going to leave a sheet up here of what I've just went over, so you can take it and study. I don't have enough for everybody, so please share. But the more important thing, and I've got more copies of this Legislative Compensation Commission, and by the way, show of hands, how many of you knew this was in the works? Bill? I'm sorry, what's your name, sir?
Kevin Barnes?
Kevin. All right, we have two. That's 10% of the people in here, maybe 7%. So two knew it was in the works. I knew it was in the works because I voted to create this commission. But most people don't know that this is even in the works. So Thursday morning at 9 a.m. at the State House, they're going to have this committee meet, and they're going to vote on this. Now, at 9:05, you're welcome to be at this meeting in room 548 South and make public comment. Now, I don't know if any of you are planning to run up to Topeka by 9:05 a.m. Thursday morning, but if you're not, you have an opportunity to make public comment by contacting a guy with legislative research named Dylan Deere. And he's got a phone number and he's got an email. And so if you want to make a comment, what good, bad, or indifferent, one or the other, or what you think about it, you need to contact Dylan Deere, but you need to do that tomorrow. Because come Thursday, it'll be too late. So I've got a paper here, and this also shows where you can watch the proceedings of the committee meeting online. So I'm going to leave that here as well for you, and you can come up there if you'd like, and either call Dylan or you can send him an email. Yes?
How many legislative days are there?
There's supposed to be 90.
And what is the salary?
The salary per day is $88.66 as it stands now. Under this proposal, it would jump to $287 per day.
Which would mean,
For 90 days.
yeah, for 90 days. So what would that be?
That would be
Okay.
right at $43,000 a year. Now, that doesn't include the stipend for the living expenses. That's $157 a day, and that's also only for legislative days. But that's an additional $157, and this commission is not proposing to change that. But that still, as it sets today, works out to, I think it's $12,935 a year. And the thing about the pay is taxed, but the $157 a day is not taxed. And we don't have to voucher that. It doesn't matter what we spend per day. Whatever we spend per day, we get $157. So if we can't live on $157 a day, everything over that is on our own dime. But I think pretty much all of us can probably live on $157 a day. Now,
You might mention that, no, none of us There's no current legislation.
Oh, so Susan wanted me to mention, and it's a good point, none of us are on this commission. This commission is made up of former elected officials. So, for example, the chairman of the committee is a guy by the name of Mark Hutton. He served in the legislature for 4 years. Were you there when he was serving? So Mark Hutton, and then he decided he wanted to run for governor, and so he gave that a shot. But have you heard of Mark Hutton? Hutton Construction, there you go. So that's who he is. He figured out fairly early on it wasn't going to happen for him, so he dropped out. And he didn't want to come back to the legislature either. Oh, here's an interesting little factoid. We serve, our terms are 2 years in the House. In the Senate, they're 4 years. So Scott, and Susan, and Stephen, and I, we are going back in 2024 because we were elected at the end of 2022. So our term began in 2023 and it will continue into 2024. If we want to go back in 2025, we've got to stand for re-election this coming fall. Well, no, the fall of 2024. And, we'll either be re-elected or we won't run or whatever. But if we won't go back for 2025, which is when this would go into effect, unless we run and get re-elected. So the members of the committee were Steve Abrams, and he used to be on the State Board of Ed, kind of a conservative Republican. Kelly Arnold, he used to be the chair of the Republican Party in the state of Kansas, and he holds some position down in Sedgwick County. I think he's treasurer or clerk, treasurer. Senator Tom Hawk, he's a recently retired Democrat senator. The longest serving legislator ever in the history of Kansas, Democrat Anthony Hensley. He spent 4 years in the House and 40 years in the Senate. And he didn't retire, he got voted out after 44 years. Mark Kars is the Republican National Committee man. And a guy by the name of Clark Schultz, and he ran for insurance commissioner. He's a former legislator. Ed McKechnie, he's a Democrat who was a former legislator, and I believe he's also state treasurer for a little bit. Yeah. And then a guy by the name of Kevin Timmons. Anybody know who he is? I don't know Kevin Timmons. But those were the people who served on the committee. And there's a very lengthy report, which I haven't read all of, but I've just tried to boil this down to the brass nuts of it. There's one last thing I'm going to say about this that really concerns. Oh, and I want to say this before I say my last thing. I'm going to be opposed to this. But if it passes, I'm going to take the pay. Of course, I have to get reelected to go back in 2025 to get the pay. But if I get reelected in 2025, I'll take the pay. I'm not going to donate it to charity, or I'm not going to refuse it. Of course, the charities that Lillian and I give to would benefit from this because we give by percentage, and the pay would be going up. So conversely, what the charities will get will be going up. But I'm not going to donate it to charity or any of that. If this is what's decided on, I'll take it. But I'm not in favor of this plan. I'm in favor of a raise for the legislature. But this is too much, too quick. And that's why I'm going to oppose it. And then the other thing that is concerning to me is I read an article which put me on to wanting to talk to you about this tonight, and I'm going to just read one paragraph out of this article. The commission was given authority by the 2023 legislature to study compensation provided to the state's 165 lawmakers, 125 in the House, 40 in the Senate. The group's proposal will be subject to public comment prior to the final vote of the commission October 19th at the Capitol. I found out about that part of it a couple of days ago, and that's why I wanted to bring it to your attention tonight. Approval would forward the report to the 2024 legislature, which could vote to block the plan, that's me, or could vote to allow it to be implemented. Now here's the line that is concerning to me, and I don't agree with hardly anything Governor Kelly does. But this says, unlike a regular bill, Governor Laura Kelly has no role in the decision. Now, why is that? I get when there's a 2/3 vote of the legislature to put a constitutional amendment on the ballot, like I value them both. And there's been, in the last 10 years, probably half a dozen constitutional amendments. And it takes a 2/3 vote of the House and a 2/3 vote of the Senate to get a constitutional amendment on the ballot. I get that. 2/3 would be enough to override any gubernatorial veto anyway. But this would be able to pass with a simple majority in the House and a simple majority in the Senate, and the governor wouldn't have the power to veto it. And she does a lot of dumb vetoes. So I'm, like I say, I'm not in favor of Laura Kelly in any way, shape, or form. But there's something fishy about a bill like this that could become law without a governor's signature. I think I've made it clear, I don't like this. I do support a raise, not this. So anyway, that's what I've got. And one last thing before we open it up for questions. I am the president of Salinas for Life. We've got a new bumper sticker out, No Baby Chooses to Die. These are the sticky kind. We also have magnetics. If you'd like a No Baby Chooses to Die bumper sticker, I've got them here at the table. Please stop by and get one. All right, questions?
That's a huge topic, wasn't it?
Yeah.
I'll talk about it. Nearest I can figure, that's maybe a $6 million increase to the budget. Is that about right?
I haven't done that, man.
What kind of raise would you support if not this amount? Have you thought about that at all? Maybe putting you on the spot.
Sure, no. Something in the vicinity of 3 to 5%. And the other thing I could support is Susan ought to be making a lot more than Clark, who ought to be making more than Scott. And the reason I say that is Susan's been up there 11 years. Stephen and I have been up there 3 years. Scott's been up there 1 year. Now, why are we all paid the same? That doesn't make, in the real world, does that make sense? Doesn't make sense to me. So I would be in favor of, we don't all need to be paid the same. And I'm not opposed to the Speaker and the President of the Senate and the chairs, getting more money than the rest of us. That's fine too. But, so I would be in like the 3 to 5% category, but beyond that, I would be in the people who've been there 11 years, get more than people who've been there 3 years, get more than people who've been there 1 year. That only makes, I guarantee you, I'm a heck of a lot better legislature today and was in 2023 than I was in 2021, where I didn't even know where the bathroom was. So, I mean, it's like anything else. The longer you work in a job, the better you get at it. And I'm a lot better today than I was when I first started in 2021. And hopefully, I'll be better in 2024 than I was in 2023.
So 3 to 5%. How long has it been since the last raise was?
17 years is what I heard.
More than that, I think.
It was a long time.
I just can't. You should be the same as me.
It's on.
Is it on?
Yeah.
I don't know if I can agree with Clark on that deal, that the longer you're there, the better you are. Because
Says the guy that's been there 1 year.
yeah, I've been there 1 year, but I also believe in term limits. And I don't believe that there should be any compensation directed on being there for a longer and longer period of time. So I can't really agree with him on that. I voted, I'm the only one here that voted against this whole thing. There were a couple reasons I voted against it. One of them is coming to fruit right now. Clark didn't really totally explain what's going to happen. If we take no action as a legislature, this will become the law or the regulation, whatever you want. We set this commission up to separate it from the legislature so legislators would not have to vote for pay raises, because we apparently don't have the courage to vote for our own pay raises. And past history has shown that people vote for a pay raise, they tend to not get reelected. And so we haven't had a pay raise, I believe, since 1980 something in the legislature. And for sure, $88 does not. I actually, at this point in the legislature, in the year, I'm actually paying money in to the state right now, because I don't get enough from the state to cover the retirement plan that I have and the health care that I have through the state. And so, yeah, we don't get enough money. I agree with that. And I particularly think it's important for young legislators that don't have the resources to go down there, and a lot of them don't last very long because they can't make enough money to survive, and so they have to quit after a few years.
4.1 years is the average stay of a rep.
And so, yes, Clark's right. We need to increase it, but I believe we need a reasonable increase, and I believe it needs to be an increase that we vote on rather than just allowing it to happen without a vote of the legislature. We need to have courage. We need to have courage in everything we do.
Just want to thank you guys for everything you do. It is a not get rich job, everybody knows. Quite frankly, I believe that the federal legislatures ought to be moved down to about that level. So that the people that care about their job are in there because they care about it. What is if this goes through, it increases from $80-some a day to
$88.66 a day to $287 a day, 4 session days,
okay.
which is 90.
So what does that do the next year and the next year? What is the increase every year after that?
It's going to be indexed to a rolling 3-year average. So let's say so we've got 3 years, we figure out what the average pay for those 3 years is, and then the following year, the average pay was what? If it goes up 3%, the legislative pay would go up 3%. If it goes down 3%, the legislative pay would go down 3%. It would be indexed to a 3-year rolling.
That's providing the commission doesn't change their mind at some point in time. Because this authority, we gave this authority to the commission. This is not the legislature getting together and deciding. This is a commission getting together and deciding what it will be. And we gave that authority to them.
Yes, sir.
3 things. Well, actually, the whole discussion tonight. Why did the legislature surrender the decision-making and giving it to a commission?
Well, Scott
There again, you didn't want to put your name to whatever comes up, like say, you gotta put your name to a pay increase.
I thought it was a good idea to create a commission to study it. If I had known this was what they were gonna come up with, I would have been voting with Scott.
Why don't you cancel it?
Well, we can't, we can't do that now.
One hand there at the table, say you're gonna try to decrease property taxes, correct?
Yep.
Now, the other hand is saying, we're gonna increase the daily
I'm
pay
not
from-
saying that.
I'm just saying, from $88 to, what, 287? That's ridiculous. You're gonna try to, you say, try to lower the taxes on property tax. To me, it's gonna jack pretty damn high in order to cover the humongous pay increase. What do you spend $150 or $180 a day for expenses? Is that for happy hour at the end of the day?
Well,
Those are all free.
So,
I make more than $88 a day.
so I just wanted to make a comment since we're on this subject. So Clark is right that I initially voted for the bill. That was House passage of the bill. That was final action, but it had to go to a conference committee. So it went to a conference committee, it got changed, we got a chance to vote on it again. I voted against it on the second
I
time.
apologize, I didn't know that.
So in the second version of that, there were rates set for the governor, lieutenant governor, attorney general, all the statewide office holders, salaries, which were pegged to the same level as a member of Congress receives. And so that was kind of thrown in there after the first initial bill that came through the House. So I felt like that was not anything we discussed, so I voted against it on the conference committee report, which was ultimately the final language that was enacted into law. So
And I apologize for not realizing.
no, that's okay. There's many times where we'll pass a bill in the House, and then it'll come back to us in a different form that might be changed because it has come out of conference committee with the Senate. So when I first got elected, the reason I ran for office was during the pandemic, and everything was shut down. I disagreed with the way the governor handled things, deeming things essential or non-essential, saying whether you could go to church or not go to church, and closing all the schools. I felt like that was a government overreach. I decided to run. Also because the average age in a news report of the state legislature was in the mid to high 60s. And I thought perhaps...
I'm not mid yet.
Susan, we're not gonna
I
ask
already
you.
gave my age out after what year I graduated.
And not that that's a bad thing, per se, but really it is. The way it's set up right now, you either have to have a career that's flexible enough for you to leave from January through May to commute or to live up in Topeka to serve in the state legislature. I am 46 years old. I'm married, have 5 kids. My wife and I own a business in town, which is an LLC. And Tom, I'm now very concerned about another report I have to fill out. But I appreciate you bringing that to our attention. But so there's not as many people that are younger from different seasons of life that could potentially benefit in our public discourse, bringing a different perspective to the table. So I do think we need to address the concerns because it is pretty poor. I commute back and forth to Topeka each day. In the 3 years I've served, I've only stayed the night 2 times. But you get reimbursed for 1 round trip per week. So if you're having to go 5 days that week, you're just eating the rest of that cost on your vehicle, maintenance and gas, and with the gas prices or like. It's pretty pitiful. But, so we need to address compensation. Whether or not this potential recommendation is going to be the answer, I don't know. But I do think it's great that Clark's brought this to your attention, because a lot of the times you learn after the fact and you don't have a chance to offer a comment. So I would encourage you to weigh in on this issue, other issues, because ultimately it's your government. You consent to allow us to represent you at the state level. And this kind of sounds bad, but you ultimately get the government you deserve. There's a lot of apathy out there, I tell you what. I'm glad to see locally, because of the Granny Brigade, there's been a resurgence of people getting involved. And you guys stepped in to fill that void during the pandemic. And people coalesced around wanting to have a voice in their government, and they felt like they were shut out. And so keep at it, and I guess I'll just end my comment there.
I just wondered if there's a website where you could go and see what the current bills are, the proposed bills are, and read them.
Kansas.
Yeah, you can just put in your search Kansas legislature, and it'll come up www.kslegislature.com.
If you Google Kansas legislature,
It
the
comes
first
up
thing
first.
that'll come up will be welcome to the Kansas legislature.
And
And you
there's-
can find out anything that's going on, but you gotta put the work in. And you gotta have somebody, if you don't know what you're doing on the website, and I don't mean that as an insult, get somebody to help you. Get one of us to help you.
So there's, across the top then, that you can look up, if you don't know who your legislator is, you can search, you can look up your legislator, you can find out their votes, you can listen live if you want to watch the House floor. You can, now since COVID, we've got every committee room is set up with the WebEx screens, and so you can watch any committee, and you can go back and watch previous
And
committees.
you can watch this committee on Thursday if you want.
I was also going to say the Kansas Legislative Research Department does a summary of legislation. So they've already published that, and you can get online. It's it's kslegresearch.org. So kslegresearch.org, and you can download an electronic copy, and that's a summary of all the legislation for the 2023 session. You can even go back and look at previous sessions. Sometimes if you do it on the website, you search for a bill number, it is confusing because they do this thing up there called a get and go. They'll strip out the contents of one bill, insert the contents of another bill in there, and then it just confuses everybody. But they do that to meet certain deadlines, and I don't think it's a good way to do it because it confuses everybody, including us. So.
Yeah, I guess I don't want to get too much in the weeds on that, but at least now you can follow the trail of it. It used to be that, you might have your name on a bill that's an abortion bill, and then it turns into an education bill, and your name is still on it. So now at least we find out like who introduces it, who's behind it. There's just more information, and it's all available.
Yeah, one of the things that's important when you're looking at a specific topic, it can be a little bit hard to find that. So what I would do to start with is look at committees that deal with that topic. So for instance, if you're interested in education legislation, go to the Education Committee and see what bills have been introduced in that committee. And that kind of gives you, because I don't remember the exact number, it's, I don't know, is it 400 or 600 bills that get introduced? It's a sizable number. And so it's really hard to track each individual bill. And then like Susan said, they get put into the sausage grinder, and they may end up, the wording may end up somewhere else. It really gets difficult. And a lot of people will talk about a specific bill number. I heard 227, was it?
229.
229. But when you're in the legislative session, those numbers get played with because there's a number actually has a value. And so certain bill numbers have more value than other bill numbers, and they'll get stolen and used for something different. Some of the stuff gets really confusing, but one of the things that's important, if you have an advocacy group that you trust or that works in Topeka, if you know a lobbyist that works on a specific issue in Topeka, they can add a lot of clarity to those things. So it is challenging, but the website is a good place to start. Looking at the committees is the next direction I would go. And legislative research does publish some really good information, but it tends to be more towards the end of the session that they really talk about where bills are at and which ones got passed. So.
And speaking of bill numbers, if you email us or snail mail, and you're referring to a bill number, please add what the issue is, because it's, for one thing, I don't remember bill numbers. I can remember the issues, but my old brain now that I don't remember. But also, sometimes they change, and so a lot of times in the memo line, it'll just have the bill number, and then the email will start right in on their opinion of that bill. And it saves us a lot of time so that we don't have to research it. Sometimes you can figure it out by the text.
I'd like to make a comment on the compensation, that there needs to be a balance between wealthy old people and people like Stephen trying to raise a family. And because I know he does sacrifice a lot. I can't imagine running back and forth and taking care of 5 kids. Last week, I'm here to lobby on behalf of the city of Salina. There's a KDOT local consult out here at the hotel. It's a well-attended event. KDOT going through projects that they're finishing up and trying to see what the needs are going forward. And the two big needs here in Salina that KDOT heard it loud and clear, Secretary Calvin heard it from several of us. Magnolia Road from I-135 to Centennial is a critical link between the airport industrial area, K-State, Tony's, and the city. There's just a lot going on out there and a lot coming with the recent announcement of the K-Airs partnership with K-State and General Atomics. And K-State's looking at increasing their enrollment by 500-600 students in the next 5 years.
So you wanting to put an on-off ramp at Magnolia?
No.
There already is.
No, the city has already allocated an engineering study to widen Magnolia
Wide Magnolia.
from the highway to Centennial. You've got deep ditches in the creek to deal with. It's a big project. The other project is the I-135, I-70 interchange, which I think this would be your district.
Oh, yeah, yes. Half of it.
Okay.
The western half.
The Clover Lake. Anyway, that was on KDOT's list, and it's a need to improve that.
Are you recommending flyovers, or how do you see improvement?
It's really dangerous.
Oh, I use
It's
it all
just
the
a
time, I
dangerous
know.
interchange.
It's a dangerous interchange. I
I
know.
came that way tonight.
Yeah, the number one
Yeah.
thing with KDOT
Yeah,
is
you'll
safety.
be on it here in just a little bit.
Number one thing is safety, and that leads me to my next item. I visited with Representative Sanders recently. State of Missouri just enacted a hands-free law statewide. Several surrounding states in Missouri have pretty much a sister law. And we just had an accident out here on I-70 the other day. The driver plowed into the back of the car. You know, car wasn't going that fast. Driving with their phone.
Yep.
We gotta do something. Kansas has done nothing. And 70% of your accidents today are caused by distracted driving of one thing or another, and usually it's driving like this.
There's a few counties, I know Wiley counties.
And I don't think that's the answer, having a crisscross.
Patchwork. You don't, yeah, you have to recognize when you do
I
that.
got on record with KDOT and the Secretariat to look at this, study it, to get uniform regulations.
What was their reaction?
They took down every word I said. It was a one-on-one deal with the guy sitting there. I felt pretty important.
Good. Good, they need to listen.
Thank you, Commissioner Longbine, for that information. I did meet with Kansas Highway Patrol a couple months ago up at the Highway Patrol Training Center off of East Iron. I learned about some of their issues there on that campus, but I also learned something more important. Deals with their staffing and their workforce. So I believe statewide there's around 270, maybe 75 troopers. Of those 275 troopers statewide, 200 approximately, this is the number that the new superintendent gave me, just over 200 are retirement eligible. And so I know this is something Senator Clays has been working on for several years, how we can recruit and retain quality folks that can help deal with issues of public safety, whether it's helping do inspections on 18-wheelers going down the road carrying a huge 96,000-pound load, or it's responding to accidents, like you mentioned. I want to bring a city issue back to you, Commissioner Longbine. I've seen a number of red lights that have been run lately in town. And that's been on my heart, because I've seen so many people running red lights. I don't know what to do about that. But when I was on the Transportation Committee, I think cities like Wichita and more urban areas were looking into certain technologies about basically issuing tickets, because they can scan your license plate and issue a ticket based off of that. So that might be something to look into, but I don't know. On that subject, earlier this year, I presented to the commission, you've seen the yellow border around lights. I presented to do 5 high traffic intersections. And I think all but one are done now. That traffic light division has just kind of worked at it as they had time. That's kind of becoming a universal thing. We were in Manhattan recently, and the yellow borders were around it. It really gets your attention as you look up from your phone. Oh, intersection.
Many of your accidents are coming from people following too close. The old rule was you were one car length back for every 10 miles an hour you're back that many, like 70 miles an hour, you're 7 car lengths back. Now, everybody's right in their front bumpers in your rear seat. And another highway patrolman, I asked him what the law was. He said 2 seconds he gives people. That's not even enough reaction time for majority of people.
You know, and another thing, oh, I'm sorry, no, this is just real quick. there's been a lot of construction going on. We're kind of catching up from years of neglect.
Yeah,
Right.
whose idea was it to do that I-70 over there during football season?
But this is just a little point of information, but KDOT has talked to us about when you have the merges going into one lane, they want us to use both lanes clear down to where it merges and then zipper in, because that's faster. I've been trying to do it in downtown Topeka, a lot of construction, and it makes people mad. And so then they get over in the middle so that it can't go around them and use that other lane. So I'm trying to, every group I talk to, I try to share that education, because it really will go smoother if we don't back up 3 miles of single lane traffic. Anyway, yeah, what was your question?
Well, I was reading about the obscenity exemption statutes, and it says all but 7 states adopted an obscenity exemption statutes that specifically exempted schools and/or public school libraries from state criminal laws against exposing children to obscene materials. Now, Kansas is not on the list of the 7 that didn't adopt it, so the state of Kansas has adopted this obscenity exemption statute that exempts schools and public libraries.
And I'm not sure exactly what statute you're looking at, but one of the things that Kansas has that I think is wrong is that we exempt school personnel from prosecution on obscenity statutes. And I believe that if school personnel are allowing obscenity or questionable material to be used in the school building, they should be responsible for that. One of the things that becomes a big issue, and I intend to support some legislation. I talked to a senator this last week about getting cell phones out of schools, or getting cell phone use out of schools. Because one of the big challenges we have is we usually have blockers and screens on internet coming into the school to prevent questionable material from coming in, but there are no way for us to prevent cell phone usage. And the prevalence of pornography on internet and the ability to get that in on a phone, the simplest way to do that is just prevent cell phone usage in the school. In addition to that, it solves a lot of other issues that are coming about by the use of cell phones in schools. And a lot of schools have already adopted that. I think it should be a statewide deal that cell phones that you bring into school, they're checked when you get there. And you pick them up when you go home. And one of the challenges we have on that, parents want to be able to be in contact with their children. And there's this old-fashioned way. It's called the office. And so this is one way. We do have laws on the books that prevent obscenity, but it does exempt school personnel from being responsible for it.
This one is for libraries, and we know that there's pornographic material in the high school, in the school libraries, as well as the public library. The top 10 books that are banned for sexual content are in our libraries. I can show you some pictures. And we challenged the book in our schools last year, I think. And all the board members voted to keep it except for me, but it was lewd, it was porn material, and they said basically, we don't want to get sued, it's going to take too much money, too much time, and I think they're exempt from lawsuits, or they're exempt from being prosecuted for having that in our schools.
Yeah, I believe that's true, and I think one of the You know, and there's a lot of standards on obscenities or pornographic material, whatever you want to call it. But a really good standard is if you aren't comfortable standing up in front of a school board and showing that material, it shouldn't be. And you know, I think that's ludicrous nationwide. We've seen a lot of cases where people have been shut down from showing what's in a library, and how ludicrous is that a group of adults that are on a school board are offended by something, and yet we think it's okay for our students to view it.
So is
Oh, you're not doing it in context. Come on, Scott.
yeah, can there be a statute that can you pass some, you know, there are states that are passing statutes that, so the libraries will be, you know, prosecuted or, you know, held responsible, accountable for having this material in there. Right now, but they feel like they're protected. Yeah. The
Well,
authors
First
are-
Amendment.
And there is a difference, and First Amendment it doesn't allow you to display pornographic material, though, to minors. And we do have laws in our state that prevent you from displaying pornographic material to minors. But there's an exemption for school personnel that they are not prosecuted. So if you walk down the street and you pull out pornographic material and show it to a minor, you will be prosecuted, or you can be prosecuted for that. But if you're a teacher, you won't be in a school.
Can you guys do something about this?
And so, yes, we can do something about that. And you may be hearing of some legislation on that. So.
That was addressed in the Parents' Bill of Rights, was it not?
It was addressed a number of years ago. It was brought up. I don't know that it's ever gone very far in the legislature, but it needs to. I mean, and one of the things you have to understand is that the education establishment has a really strong lobby in our state, and they don't really want to have that responsibility. I think they should have that responsibility, and I think we can help them out. So.
Well, I want to thank all of you for coming. We really enjoyed it. I think it was a very informative night. Learned a lot. And before you go, Tina is going to post each one of these representatives' email address on our Facebook page. So if you don't have their email address, look at our Facebook page, and Tina will get it on there within the next day or so. So that way you can contact each and every one of those legislators.
I guess I'd like to add you to my newsletter list.
Yeah.
Or give me your
Check with
email
them.
tonight, or just send me an email when she gets.
Yeah, and I know Scott, I get his newsletter. If you want Scott's newsletter, he gets one out in fact, I just got one.
Every week.
Yes, every week Scott sends one out, so. And as you know, the Granite Brigade does not have any money, so we have a little jar back there. If you want to throw in a couple of dollars to help pay for our rent tonight, we would appreciate it. And we want to thank Mean Dean Productions for streamlining this tonight. Appreciate that. That'll be on the Granite Brigade page and YouTube. So you might check it out. And when you get home, and is there anything else, Tina? Okay. Oh, yeah.
Here's Wayne.
If you're
Come get
able,
some handouts.
if you're, get handouts from Clark, and if you're able, help us put the chairs back. And Chad, you want to lead us in a closing prayer?
Sure. Let's finish with prayer, guys. God, thank you for allowing us to be here tonight. I appreciate our representatives who are here, and God, the time that they took to explain some things to us. Lord, I pray that you'll give us wisdom, give them wisdom in their decisions, and give us discernment. Lord, for all of these things that are taking place in our state, we know you're in control. We know you're in charge. I pray that you will use us in whatever way you see fit to accomplish your purpose here in the state of Kansas. Bless us as we're dismissed. Keep us safe. Protect us, God, physically and spiritually. We ask in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.